Okay, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Calnex. It's good to have you here. It's a bit different from a usually Tuesday morning in here. But Calnex is a technology company. We make test solutions for the telecommunications industry. Well, we're making them is probably a better understatement. We're a world leader in what we do. So what we do is we prove the performance of the critical infrastructure that's required to support the new mobile network. You've heard of 3G, 4G, you're about to hear about 5G, LTE, there's lots of acronyms on the way. And effectively this needs a very sophisticated infrastructure to support it, and that's what we do. We make test equipment to basically do the testing, and here's one of them sitting here. They're basically very high value, high margin and high complexity products. These products sell typically for around £40,000 each. And although Calnex is now it's just started its 10th year, to date we have shipped product to over 300 customer sites in 47 countries around the world. So you may ask a question, which would be a good question to ask, is how do you persuade people around the world to spend £40,000 on one of these bad boys? Well, let me tell you, it is a bit of a challenge, but it isn't really that complex. First of all, you need to understand telecoms, you need to understand the technology and identify where the next wave of opportunities coming, and then you need the ability to look at that with somebody that's been involved in test and measurement and see the opportunity for a product that will help your customers. Then you need an engineering team that's able to take that idea and develop it into an actual world-leading product in terms of using the latest techniques and the latest technology in the world and produce something that's far better than what the competition are doing. Once you have the product, then you need the front-end sales guys to engage with your customers and be able to articulate simply why they should spend a lot of money and how your product is going to help them do their job. And then you need an operations team that can build repetitively a high-quality product and deliver that every time that the customer needs it, exactly when they need it. And then you need a support team who basically are always on the phone or on an email that will actually help the customers and make sure they feel loved at every turn. It's as simple as that. And if you can do that repetitively and better and quicker than your competition, then you can build a global network. And it isn't really quite as complicated as I've made it sound, but there is one key ingredient that you always need at every stage in that process, and that's talented people. And it's absolutely key that you've got talented people, and Calnex is stacked with talented people, and they're all sitting behind you here today. So I hope you've a chance. That's kind of Calnex in a nutshell. I hope you've a chance to maybe meet some of the team and chat with them and find out what we do in here. But anyway, let me pass on to Nicola Sturgeon, our First Minister.
Thank you very much indeed, and let me begin by saying it's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning to launch the Scottish Government's new economic strategy, and a big thank you to Tommy and to everybody here at Calnex for being so welcoming as our hosts this morning. This strategy, Scotland's economic strategy, sets out a long-term vision for Scotland's economy, and it's based on a fundamental principle. We will become a more productive and more prosperous country if we create a conducive economic and business environment, but also if we take the steps to become a fairer society. The Scottish Government's Council of Economic Advisers, some of whom are here with us today, the Council meets later today and it's recently been strengthened by 5 new appointments, will provide key advice to the Scottish Government on how we measure our progress against this strategy and how we best deliver our goals. Professor Joseph Stiglitz, who is a member of the Council as well as being a renowned Nobel laureate, has said that tackling inequality is the foremost challenge that many governments face. Scotland's economic strategy leads the way in identifying the challenges and provides a strong vision for change. So this strategy sets out the key measures that we need to take as a country to improve our competitiveness and promote greater equality. And it's really appropriate that we are launching this strategy here at Calnex this morning. This company demonstrates that there are no limits to what Scottish businesses can achieve. Calnex has received support from Scottish Enterprise when it has needed that support, for example, to start up the company and then to help to market its first product. But the success of this company is due first and foremost to its employees who have developed products for testing telecommunications equipment which are now in demand right across the globe. Now this company employs 55 people here in Linlithgow, around a dozen more around the world, and exports more than 95% of its products. It sells to 270 companies in 47 different countries, from Australia to Azerbaijan. It is a major success story that we want other companies across Scotland to emulate. And Scotland is blessed with many ambitious and innovative companies just like Calnex. I see examples of those every single week in towns and cities across our country. But we need to support many more to develop and to succeed in the way that this company is doing. We also know that productivity is key to any sustainable long-term improvement in living standards. That's why increased productivity has been such a focus of our efforts in recent years, and we've had some considerable success. When we published the first Scottish Government economic strategy back in 2007, Scotland's productivity then was 6% below that of the rest of the UK. The gap with the rest of the UK has reduced significantly since then, but we're still some 13% below Sweden and 20% below Germany. So we need to do much more, and that's why we now want to focus on closing the gap with the very best in Europe. And that really matters. For example, we know that increasing Scotland's total factor productivity by just 0.1% a year could boost our GDP by 1.3% and in turn boost employment by 11,000 and tax revenues by £400 million a year after 10 years. So it's really important. And to do this, we need to invest in infrastructure and skills, in contrast to the UK government's deep and harmful cuts in public spending. We need to support the innovation which leads to new technologies, new products and new ways of working. We need to promote internationalisation and encourage more companies to market and sell their products overseas and build on our export successes of recent years. And we need to continue with important policies which are already helping many companies across the country, such as the Small Business Bonus Scheme, which will benefit almost 100,000 business premises next year. And yes, we need to tackle inequality. Scotland is, I'm very proud to say, now leading the way in putting the quest for greater equality at the heart not just of our social strategy, but at the heart also of our economic strategy. And this strategy that we're publishing today explains in detail how we will seek to do that, because doing it is vital to our economic success. So we will promote fair work and a living wage. We will encourage more women and disabled people into the labour market. We will make the key investments in health and educational attainment that will enable us to better tackle intergenerational poverty and ensure that the benefits of growth are felt across our cities, our towns and our rural areas. Our approach of promoting equality and competitiveness together as two sides of the same coin is in itself innovative, but it is also in tune with a growing international consensus. International Monetary Fund research, which examined 173 countries over 50 years, has shown that more unequal countries also tend to have lower and less durable economic growth. The OECD has estimated that inequality actually reduced the UK's economic growth by 9% in the years between 1990 and 2010. And by that reckoning, the cost of our inequality has been a total loss to the UK economy of £100 billion. That's almost £1,500 for every single person who lives in the country. But that loss over recent years is also an indicator of what we stand to gain economically if we put tackling inequality at the heart of what we do. So all of us know, and this company is a living example of the fact that Scotland is a country of enormous potential. We have a strong international brand and reputation. We have great natural resources, and we have the most highly educated workforce in Europe. Our challenge is to build on and maximise all of these assets, while at the same time to do more to stop inequality from holding us back. We must help individuals and companies to flourish in every part of our country. So today's strategy, which is based on the key pillars of investment, innovation, inclusive growth and internationalisation, draws on the best international evidence, and its implementation will be guided by some of the world's leading independent experts. It offers a vision not just of our economy but of our society, which I believe will command wide support from businesses, trade unions, the third sector and many others across our country. And it sets out the key policies, measures and interventions which will help us to achieve that vision. This strategy will play an important role in making Scotland a fairer and more prosperous nation in the years to come, and that's why I'm so delighted to be here at this successful company to launch it today. I'll now ask the Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, to say a few words before we open up to questions. John.
Thank you, First Minister. Let me add just a few comments to the outline from the First Minister. It's a pleasure to be here at Calnex to launch Scotland's economic strategy 8 years after the publication of our original strategy as a government. In 2007, our stated purpose as an administration was that we were intent on creating a more successful country with opportunities for all of Scotland to flourish through increasing sustainable economic growth. And that purpose remains at the very heart of our approach. This update comes during a period of economic improvement in Scotland. Our economy has grown continuously for over 2 years, accompanied by consistent reductions in unemployment and increases in employment. The number of people in employment in Scotland is currently at a record level, around 2.6 million people. And Scotland's businesses drive these improvements, and their recent performance has been strong. Over the period 2007 to 2013, the value of Scotland's international exports has increased by around 40%, and business expenditure in research and development has increased by 29%. So there has been real tangible progress on employment and on investment in the productive economy. But beyond headline indicators, challenges remain, such as low pay, underemployment and weak productivity growth. In ensuring we address these challenges and build on our successes, Scotland's economic strategy will focus on 4 key priorities: investing in our people and our infrastructure in a sustainable way, fostering a culture of innovation, promoting inclusive growth through a fair and inclusive jobs market and regional cohesion, and promoting Scotland on the international stage to boost our trade and investment, our influence and our networks. Support for our businesses will remain central to the approach of the government. We'll maintain the small business bonus while implementing new measures, including the establishment of a business development bank and a forum on innovation, which I will chair on the government's behalf. We'll support our network of innovation centres to link up Scotland's world-leading academic research base with our strong business base. We will invest in our infrastructure with a total of £11 billion of capital investment in the 3 years to 2015-16. And investment in skills and education will play a fundamental role in reducing inequality and improving economic performance. It's for all these reasons that we have committed to free higher education, to investing in our further education sector, and to taking forward measures to improve the attainment of young people in our schools, particularly with a £100 million attainment fund focused on improving outcomes in Scotland's most disadvantaged communities. All of the efforts that we take forward in this respect are designed to improve access to the labour market, which is also strengthened by the establishment of our performance on modern apprenticeships, with 30,000 new opportunities every year for young people to take part in modern apprenticeships, in building up to that figure in 2020. We will expand our provision of childcare as part of continued investment in early years, and as well as benefiting children, this policy opens up the labour market to those for whom childcare has been a particular barrier. We will continue to invest in our investment and our communities in a sustainable way. An example of this being the £10 million that's available in the forthcoming financial year through the Local Energy Investment Fund to invest on behalf of communities in community renewable schemes in localities. In our approach to inclusive growth, we will strive to lead by example, advancing greater gender equality as evidenced by the composition of the Government's Cabinet, and by ensuring that all staff covered by our own policies receive the living wage. We are funding the Poverty Alliance to promote the take-up of living wage accreditation across the wider economy, and we are well on track to exceed our target of at least 150 Scottish firms accredited as living wage employers by the end of this year. As part of the delivery of our economic strategy, a Fair Work Convention will also be established. It will encourage employers, employees and trade unions to share, to encourage and to adopt best practice, including the living wage, in workplaces right across the country. And our business pledge will also develop a partnership between the Scottish Government and businesses by providing support in return for a commitment to practices including paying the living wage and not using 0 hours contracts. These policies progress our agenda against our goals of reducing inequality and boosting competitiveness. They are long-term goals, and progress will rely on buy-in from all of our partners. We will continue to work with our delivery partners, with businesses and with communities in the spirit of our One Scotland approach. We see this as the starting point for continuous engagement and further development as we aim to tackle the long-term challenges of improving the competitiveness of the Scottish economy and tackling the inequality that blights so many of our fellow citizens. Thank you very much.
I will open the session now to questions from employees of Calnex. Members of the media are here as well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how's this strategy going to help the small companies like Calnex?
It's a very good question. Some of what the strategy does is recommit the Scottish Government to specific help for small companies. Not all small companies benefit from the Small Business Bonus Scheme, which is a scheme that reduces or removes business rates liability from small businesses, but 100,000 premises are already benefiting from that scheme, so we want to continue with that help. But we want to introduce a range of additional support mechanisms for small and medium-sized businesses. John spoke about the ambition we have to create a business development bank, which will look specifically to work with small and medium-sized businesses, with finance markets, to improve the availability of capital finance for businesses that are looking to grow, and that will be specifically focused on businesses with high growth potential. We want to help businesses of all sizes, but I think this is particularly important for small businesses to access the skills that they need to grow. And the last example, although there are many others, is support for exports and internationalisation. Obviously, this company is a great example of a company that is already doing extremely well in terms of exports. 95% of your products are already sold overseas, but we want to see more companies understand, appreciate and take advantage of the potential of international markets, and we want to deliver targeted support to enable companies to do that. So this strategy envisages a range of different support mechanisms and interventions, but overall it's about creating the right environment for our businesses to establish themselves, to grow and to flourish. And any successful business environment doesn't just focus on the kind of measures I'm talking about. It also makes sure we've got a healthy, skilled, well-educated population able to take up the opportunities that businesses provide and earn decent wages and then be able to support themselves. And Rosanna Cunningham, who's here today, is the Cabinet Secretary for Fair Work. And the concept of fair work as the key way in which we seek to tackle inequality is at the very heart of what we are outlining today. Yes, Magnus.
First Minister, you said that in 2007 the productivity gap between Scotland and the UK was 6%. What is the productivity gap now? And also on productivity, of all of the measures and initiatives in the strategy, which of those do you think are particularly important when it comes to improving productivity?
Productivity in Scotland now is, broadly speaking, on a par with the rest of the UK. So our challenge now, as we see it, is to raise productivity levels in Scotland to levels that will compete with and equate with the best in Europe. And that's the very clear ambition that we've put at the heart of the strategy. In terms of what elements in the strategy will contribute to meeting that challenge in different ways and to different extents, all of what we set out in here will do so. But I think I would highlight two things. Firstly, the focus we've put here on innovation. This company is a perfect example of how Tommy was just telling us there that, when other companies, by the time other companies seek to emulate what this company is doing, this company has already moved ahead because it has innovated and it's come up with the next solutions to the problems and the challenges that they're facing. So innovation, making sure that we've got a productive workforce and a productive business base. But secondly, what I would highlight is the emphasis we're putting here on employees and supporting employees and making sure that work for people in companies across the country is rewarding. It's well rewarded financially, it's well rewarded in terms of the quality of the work so that we get more out of the workforce. Some of the people in this room may have been at the National Economic Forum that took place in December, I think, towards the end of the year, and there was a representative of a relatively small company in Scotland there who went into great and very compelling detail about the benefits to the bottom line and the productivity of his company of paying the living wage. So we know that paying the living wage helps individuals, but what we're also trying to demonstrate is the way in which that helps companies become more productive, because it helps them with staff retention, they get more out of staff. So innovation and the emphasis we're putting in fair work are two elements that I would highlight, but all elements of this strategy to some extent will help us with that challenge. Do you want to add anything, John?
I think the point I'd concentrate on is the innovation example, because what the government's interventions on innovation have been designed to make an ever closer connection between our academic base and our business base, and there's a lot of progress been made in that respect. But the 8 innovation centres that we've established have a particular mandate to make sure we get more and more companies involved in some of the key leading edge activity. And of course that then starts a process, because with good innovation then comes greater ability to promote products overseas. Tommy was telling us earlier on, over 95% of the products of this company are sold to markets out with the United Kingdom. So that's a perfect example of what we can do. And once you drive that process of internationalisation, you're then driving a process of improving the quality and the nature of employment. And all of these elements fit together very strongly, as the First Minister set out.
Any other questions? Yes.
Are those the same factors that you point to, which explain how we managed to close the productivity gap since 2007? Or is there anything else that we've done in the 15 years?
These will broadly be the general factors that have succeeded in enabling us to do that, and that's what we've now got to build upon. I mean, what the strategy seeks to do is outline and reflect on and celebrate the success we've had in the face of some of the toughest economic conditions over the past few years that would have been imaginable, but not rest in our laurels. We want to measure ourselves consistently against the best in Europe and the world. I should say, as an aside, one of the key points that the strategy makes and underlines is the importance to the Scottish economy, to jobs, to our prosperity of Scotland remaining within the European Union, which is clearly a debate that will potentially develop further over the next few years. And we make it very clear here that membership of the European Union is a key component of the success of companies like this, and that's an argument that we'll continue to make. Yes.
You mentioned childcare. I was wondering what form this will take and what other measures are going to be taken to help women get back into work.
Very good question, and one close to the heart of the government. I'll ask Rosanna to say a bit in a second just about the broader fair work agenda, which is promoting fair work for everybody, but is specifically focused on supporting more women, more people with disabilities into the workforce so that we've got greater levels of participation generally. The government has substantially increased the provision of childcare already. So when we took office in 2007, there was an entitlement to free childcare for 3 and 4 year olds of 412 hours a year. We've taken that to 600 hours a year for 3 4 year olds and some of the most vulnerable 2 year olds in the country. So by August of this year, 27% of 2 year olds will also have that entitlement. What we are focused on now is working with local authorities to make sure that general entitlement is available as flexibly as possible for parents, because it's not just the totality of the number of hours of childcare that matters, it's whether you can access that entitlement in a way that works for your working patterns. So we're focused increasingly on flexibility. What we've also set out is an ambition in the next Parliament, assuming we're re-elected next year, over the life of the next Parliament, to move to a situation where childcare, free childcare, is available on a comparable basis to the number of hours children spend in primary school, which would be roughly 30 hours per week. Now, that is a massive transformation of the provision of childcare, and it will take us a few years to get from where we are now to there, but that is the ambition we set out. Now, why is that important? It's the twin reasons of giving children the best start in life. You know, we've got lots and lots of evidence that, well, firstly, on the downside, by the time a child goes to primary school, some of the gap, equality gap in attainment can already have set in, driven by differences in background. So we need to tackle that in the earliest years. But secondly, if we can use childcare as one of the ways in which we get more women enabled, if they want to return to the workforce, then the economic activity and the additional tax revenues that then generates pays for that policy over the long term. So it's one of these win-win policies that's really important and is really central to the vision of what we're trying to do. In terms of other things, we've also, and I've put a very strong emphasis on gender equality at all levels of the workforce, starting at the top levels, because that then tends to drive the decision making that influences these things further down in companies. And we've tried to lead by example by having the first gender balanced cabinet, and I understand one of only 3 gender balanced cabinets in the industrialised world, so it's a good starting point. Rosanna, do you want to say something about the wider Fair Work agenda?
Yeah, if I can just say something about women as well, because one of the most interesting things that we're going to have to deal with, challenging perhaps rather more than interesting, is that now that we've got various employment statistics going in the right direction, what we've actually got to look at then is the quality of the work that's involved. And we do know that a huge number of people are still underemployed. They want to work more hours than they are able to find. And of course, a lot of that will be women who are trapped into not being able to work terribly many hours because of childcare. And I think the childcare component is extremely important in that. But there is a wider issue. One of the most shocking developments over the last few years has been the inexorable rise of what you call in-work poverty. People who are working but are so poor that they are really not able to look after themselves and their families. Many of the people that are accessing food banks now are folk who are actually in work. And it seems to me quite shocking that we've got to that position, which is why we want to put so much emphasis on moving companies towards thinking about the living wage. And I congratulate Calnex for being a living wage employer. It's extremely important, because we know that the groups of people most impacted by in-work poverty are women, are lone parents, are the disabled, are those who are in various ethnic minority groups, the folk who may be working but who are struggling massively. That then has a massive impact in terms of their health and in terms of the education outcomes, and particularly for the next generation as well. So if you raise people's income levels, what you do is not just affect their immediate lives, but affect the lives of their children as well. And that gets us back into the business of educational attainment. You're not going to do well at school if you're hungry and you're not being, and your health isn't good. If you're not doing well at school, you end up not being able to, in the future, provide the apprentices and the graduates that companies like Calnex will need. All of it is a circle a virtuous circle that we've got to develop, instead of at the moment what is a not very virtuous circle that is going in the other direction.
Okay, thanks, Rosanna. Okay, time for another couple of questions if there are any. I'm not sure what's happened to the productivity levels of this company during the course of this morning. So, Magnus, you've had one, so if we'll get time, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask the First Minister on education what you think of Jim Murphy's announcement today that university education will remain free in Scotland if we win the election next year?
Well, there's nothing like a convert to a good cause. you know, I welcome any convert to the cause of free university education. I feel passionately about this subject, having benefited from a free university education as I was growing up. And, you know, education is one of the reasons I can stand here today as First Minister. I've got no right to take that away from any young person growing up today or in years to come. I think there is, you know, a degree of a credibility issue around Mr Murphy's comments today. He has consistently voted for tuition fees throughout his political career, so I think people will be sceptical, if I can put it as politely and as diplomatically, at this sudden change of heart, and may judge, it's for others to decide this, that it's more a kind of desperate tactical manoeuvre to try and rescue the fortunes of his party than any real commitment to free education. I think you should always judge people on what they do, not just on what they say. And if you judge Mr Murphy on what he's done over the years, then you will see somebody who has been an avid supporter of tuition fees. If there's, I'll take James and then I will come back to you, Magnus.
Thanks, First Minister. You previously have argued in favour of a corporation tax cut across the board, as I understood it in Scotland. The document that I'm reading from you today suggests that you're abandoning that in favour of a more targeted approach rather than a blanket corporation tax cut. Is that a change in policy?
What we'll do is, as and when we get powers over various taxes in Scotland, and at the moment, as you know, there is no proposal on the table, regrettably, to devolve corporation tax to Scotland, although there is a proposal to devolve it to Northern Ireland. But we will use these powers in a way that we deem appropriate, in light of the prevailing economic circumstances, but also in light of the economic and social objectives that we have set. I mean, I should firstly congratulate you for already having got to page 78 or 79 in the document, 80 in fact it is. Well, thank you for that's impressive speed reading. But yeah, what we are signalling here is that we would see in the years to come that the real benefit of having control over corporation tax is to use that in a targeted way to boost R&D, to encourage investment in growth areas of the economy rather than in a blanket way. But, you know, different times will demand different approaches to corporation tax and to the use of other taxes. But this is what we deem would be appropriate in the years to come if we do indeed get control of corporation tax. Magnus.
This also refers to page 80, as looked with Cameron. I was going to ask more generally, overall in terms of the economic strategy, to what extent does it depend on gaining new powers? You say the Scottish Government's priority over the next few years will be to secure further economic powers, and it goes on to say this is key for many of our policies in this strategy. So to what extent does the strategy depend on achieving those powers?
What we're not doing today is publishing a strategy that's meaningless unless we've got a whole swathe of new powers. We have taken an approach to government over the past 8 years now, and it's an approach to government we will continue to take, of using the powers we have at any given time to the best advantage, to using the resources we have at any given time to best advantage. And that's what this strategy is predicated on. It's looking at the powers we have right now and looking at how we use them innovatively, imaginatively and creatively to grow our economy, to become more competitive and to tackle inequality. So largely this strategy is predicated on the work of this government in the here and now, as the strategy we published in 2007 was. But it makes the point, and you know, it's an obvious point, that the more powers we have over our economy and the more social levers we have at our own disposal, the more successful we'll be, the more we'll be able to use these levers and powers in a way that meets the objectives we set out in the strategy. The document, I think on page 79 as opposed to on page 80 or page 78 or thereabouts, makes the point that even if the Smith Commission proposals are implemented in full, and that remains an if, but let's assume that they are, then 70% of all tax varying powers will remain at Westminster. 85% of the social security budget will remain at Westminster. Key levers like the minimum wage will remain at Westminster. And we make the simple point that we're going to be more successful, assuming we use these powers appropriately. Just having new powers doesn't change anything. It's how you use them that matters. But assuming we use them appropriately and well, we're going to be more successful the more levers we have in our own hands. But we're not going to sit back and not use the powers we've got. just because we don't have all the ones we would want. And this strategy is predicated on us using the powers and the resources that we have in the best way that we possibly can. Okay, one more question if there is one. Yes, sir.
I know there's a number of companies in the central belt here who are struggling to find the skills they need to
Yeah.
support their growth. What impact does the UK immigration policy have on your economic strategy?
The UK immigration policy has had an impact in various sectors of the Scottish economy, which has not been a particularly good one in recent years. So the restrictions, the ending, in fact, of the post-study work visa has been one of the significant policies introduced by the current UK government that has frustrated many of our objectives and has had implications, you know, in our health service and other areas of our economy. So we certainly take the view that one way of enhancing the Scottish Government's ability to tailor economic policy in the way we see appropriate is to have much more flexibility around immigration policy. No country can have an open door immigration policy. You require to have rules that regulate who can come to the country in what circumstances and for what reasons. But it seems to me sensible to be able to flex and tailor that policy in a way that suits your own economic circumstances, because the circumstances of our economy are clearly not identical to the circumstances of the economies in London and the South East, and therefore to have a entirely one-size-fits-all policy is not the best way of proceeding. Now, this is an area, I'll ask John to say a bit about, you know, the deliberations in the Smith Commission over this. It's an area where the Smith Commission proposals don't go nearly as far as we would like them to do.
I think the one point I'd add to what the First Minister said is that I think the key change in the short term, which is practical, tangible and which could be implemented within the current policy environment of the UK, is to have a resumption of the post-study work visa proposition, which would enable students who come to this country, who get their education here, who probably fall in love with Scotland and think, I'd like to stay here and make my career here and all the rest of it. And we now have to say to them, I'm afraid you've run out of road and you've got to go back home. And that talent base, and you know, we've talked to the company this morning. I talk to companies every day of the week, and frequently the conversation is about the challenge of getting all of the skilled personnel that they would require. And if we have individuals who've gone through our academic system, who've fallen in love with Scotland, who'd like to stay here, contribute to our economy, I think we should welcome them. And the post-study work visa proposal was left at the end of the Smith Commission that I took part in as essentially business to be completed, that we should find a way of negotiating with the United Kingdom government to make progress on this question, and that's exactly what the Scottish Government is trying to do.
In terms of the wider skills agenda, you know, ensuring the pipeline of skills that our economy needs to thrive and to flourish is a key part of the strategy that we're outlining today. Talking to Tommy and colleagues previously about, you know, the success this company has in attracting the right skills, but, you know, the challenges there are in terms of attracting the right people given the overall pressures, I guess, and engineering, for example, and this company's doing some good work in working with schools, because, you know, getting more women into engineering is one way of easing that skills challenge, and it's something we're very focused on. So making sure we've got the right skills in the right places is a key part of any strategy to ensure a growing, successful, prosperous economy. Okay, with that, can I thank you all very much for coming along. Members of the media, if you've got further questions, there'll be some opportunities afterwards, but can I end by sincerely thanking everybody at Calnex for allowing us to come here and disrupt your working morning. You are a fantastic example of a successful Scottish company that we should all be really, really proud of. So we wish you every success in your future prosperity as a company. Thank you very much indeed.